been kind of a long week. Between the Harley burning up a week ago, or the charging system burning up, and trying to change the transmission on the Yukon, it's been a busy week. Just got back from a 130-mile ride. Wanted to do an evaluation on what I did on the clutch. First off, charging system's good. Put new stator, regulator, and battery in it. Twin power stuff. Seems to be working fine. I mean, no lights. Check the voltage. We were like 14 volts sitting there, so that's all good. I did not film any of the changing the stator because there's like 100 videos out there of people changing Harley stators. The only thing I can mention is when you pull the wiring out for the stator, because it's a long wire that runs down through everything, tie a string onto it. You drag that through, then it lets you pull the new wire back through. It's handy. The other question is, why are there so many damn videos of people changing stators on Harleys? I've worked on bikes for like 33 years now, and I have changed one charging coil that ran the ignition on a Sea-Doo because it went bad, and other than that, I don't think I've ever had to replace a bad stator. I put in an upgraded stator so I could have more wattage, but never a bad one. And this thing melted down. There's tons of videos of them melting down. So why are Harleys that hard on the stators? If you know, throw it in the comments, because I would love to know so I can avoid having this happen again. One of the guys that rides Harleys at work said it's because generally get a bad battery. I don't know if the charging system doesn't have a limit set up to where it'll just overcharge, and I did end up having a bad battery. Had a bad cell, but I don't know if the charging system killed the battery or the battery went bad, and because I kept riding it, I fried the charging system trying to maintain a bad battery. One way or the other, it all melted down. So, but I'm kind of curious why they have so much problems. Okay, on to the clutch. I went ahead and, like in the video, I put the aluminum blocking slugs in the clutch disc so it no longer had the springs. I went and, as I mentioned, I found out that is a Buell clutch basket. I mean, it's identical to the pictures. And when I'm looking through the service manual on Buell, it says right in there that when you're servicing this, it will rattle. So the way it's set up is the way it's supposed to be set up. The clutch, the springs will rattle. And one thing I thought of that why I hear it more on the Harley than I did the Buell is because you hear it at idle. Well, the Harley idles at about 800, and the Buells, you always set them at about 1,000. So I'm thinking that extra was probably why the Buells were a little quieter. But I like the 800 RPM on the Harley because it's just got a nice thump to it. So not going to change that. When I was looking at that, it called the spring assembly in the clutch basket a compensator. And I'm not real familiar with Harleys. This is my first Harley. I've had the Buells before for a long time. This is my first actual Harley, and I didn't know. I mean, I know what a compensator does in general terms, but I didn't know specifically on a Harley, so I Googled it. If you're familiar with big twins, you're probably familiar with compensators because they've got compensators. Do the same thing that the spring assembly does on the basket, but they, on the big twins, are mounted on the flywheel side, on the engine side, and it is designed to absorb some of the pulses that the lumpy V-twin puts out. So when I read that, I was like, maybe this whole deal was a bad idea, trying to change the clutch basket. Because I was under the assumption, because it looks like the damping springs in a car clutch, and I assumed that it was for when you engage the clutch to take up the shock load then, but apparently that's not what it's for. And then I had the fact that the XLs do not use a compensator in there. Their basket is solid and they have a spring-loaded disc of some kind. I've heard about those falling apart. I haven't actually seen one, but that was to help with the engagement, smoothing that out. So I thought, well, it still should be fine because people change the XL baskets, everything. So I put it in there, Fired it up. Sounds good. Rattle's gone. And this rattle I'm talking about was not super bad. It was just, it sounded like something might be broke. And I wanted to find out. I had changed the oil to see if there was any particles in there. There's never been any particles, so I knew nothing was like coming apart, but I still wanted to see what it was. And then when I had to take it out to the stator, it's like, well, there it is. But I went ahead and fired it up. Rattle's gone. Took it out for a drive. I'm thinking, nice, this is sweet. This clutch engagement, couldn't tell a bit of difference. Got out on the highway and I found out what the compensator does. From about 3,000 to 3,800 RPM, I now had a pretty good vibration, pulse, whatever you want to call it, going through the bike. If you accelerated, from a stop and took off, you didn't notice it. But when it was really noticeable was when you would be like running 70, like 4,000 RPM, be nice and smooth. You slow down for a corner, slow down for traffic, get back on the throttle, it'd be around 3,000 RPM, and you could feel it through the whole bike. And again, it wasn't terrible. Probably if I had never rode an XR before and got on it, I would just assume that was how a Harley was. But since I've had it the other way and knew that was probably caused by the changes I'd made, I rode it around for 20 some miles, and I'm thinking, well, can I get used to this? Nope. I went home, tore it apart, put the springs back in. Put the springs back in, 130 miles a day. It's just absolutely perfect, just like it was. A little bit of rattle at idle, but no pulsation, no vibration in that narrow RPM range now. So the compensator has a purpose, and it does it really well. Buell apparently knew what they were doing. So I can't say that I'd recommend doing what I did, blocking it, and I also can't say that I'd recommend getting an XL clutch basket unless you're prepared for a little more vibration. So my 2 cents, leave the springs, ignore the rattle, and just run it. And I'd also mentioned before that I thought the clutch discs were different between the XR and the XLs. They have different part numbers on the kits because there's a different amount of clutch discs, especially on the XL. They have that spring plate. The clutch discs are the same. There's a different amount between the two bikes, but the discs themselves are the same. So you could use one kit or the other. And you might have to get, if you use like a Buell kit on an XL, you might have to get an extra clutch disc, because when they eliminate that spring plate, they just stack another disc in there. I think it's just fiber to fiber, so it's just basically a place saver. You could use an old disc or whatever, but the discs are the same. I assume the steels are, but I don't know for 100% sure. But I took it right back apart, put the springs back in it. It's just like, I know how it was before. It was nice and smooth. That's how I want it. So no XL clutch basket in the future for me. I'm just going to leave it alone, run it as is. Everything's good. Sounds good, feels good. Right now it's charging the battery, so just going to enjoy the bike as is and not worry about it, because now that I know what the rattle is and know that the rattle's not causing any problems, it just doesn't bother me anymore. But that's all I got. Don't recommend doing the mod. It's up to you. If you have some reason that you're tearing up the Buell baskets, drag racing, whatever, then yeah, use an XL basket, because you're not going to notice that if you're just running a straight line, red line it, shift, red line, shift. It's just when you're cruising down the road and hit that certain RPM at certain times, you can feel it. And I just didn't like it and knew I could fix it, so I put it back. That's all I got. Till next time.